In this video, I'm going to go over 10 things that you need to run a successful sales team. If you don't know who I am, my name is Usman Kiani and I document my journey getting to 10 million revenue. And I show you everything that I learned along the way. And in this video, I'm going to go over all of my key tips that you need to run a successful sales team. For the last 10 years, I've dedicated towards sales, working at 2 8-figure companies and now working with multiple 7 and 8-figure businesses on building their sales team and sales processes. And I'm going to go over 10 of the key things that you need to actually build a successful sales team to make sure all those leads aren't going to waste. Starting with point number 1, you need to set clear expectations and goals. If you know the framework of SMART goals, making it specific, measurable, achievable, relatable, and setting a time for it, and that's the framework of your SMART goals, you need to make sure that your team all have those goals in place. You need to make sure that you sit down with every single one of them every single week, and you'll be ensuring that they know where they're going, where they're at, and where they are with the KPIs. Commonly, I remember working at a sales office. This was in North London when I was running gyms. I would commonly just go up to the salespeople and just say, so how many sales you got to do this month? And they would say, oh, I'm not really sure. They would look at the whiteboard and look at their computer, check the dashboard, and I would know instantly that he doesn't know his numbers or she doesn't know his numbers. Their numbers, their run rate, the daily numbers, they should know at any time. So a great thing as a sales manager or a founder, you need to be able to ask your salespeople, how are you doing for this month? How are you tracking? And just by asking that question regularly and often will make sure that it stays on top of mind. It makes sure that it's important. You're measuring it in some way so they know that it's always being asked of them. And when you have a salesperson and they don't know their numbers for that month, for that week, for that day, instantly it's a red flag. One, it will show me that salesperson really doesn't care. Because I would ask salespeople in my team, how are they doing for that month? How are you doing? I would know the answer. I would already have looked at the dashboard, but I would ask them because I wanted to know, do they know? So if I would ask them, he or she, that salesperson, so how are you performing for this month and how are you doing? If they would say something like, oh, I'm not really sure, I'm just going to check for you. That's what commonly would say. I'm just going to check. I would know it's too late. And I'll say, you should know your numbers, shouldn't you? Why don't you not know your numbers? And I would say it in a tone which is like joking, but they would know that they need to know their numbers. And now the first and second time, you'll nudge them. The third time, if they don't know their numbers and you're asking them the same month, you probably know that salesperson is not the one who's going to hit his numbers. Because the salespeople that are always lagging are the ones that don't track. Simply the salespeople that measure, that track, know their run rate, know how many leads they need to get that day, know how many appointments they've walked into that day. The ones who know that data off the top of their head are the ones that are always the most successful. I've done this for over 10 years. And I can tell you, when I was a salesperson, if someone asked me about my numbers, I would know them straight away. I would never even hesitate. I would just always have them at the top of mind. And just simply by knowing the numbers, you can always make sure that your team is held accountable. Too many founders, they find it scary. They find it hard to ask the salespeople that question. And if you found it scary or hard to ask as a sales manager, as a founder, your team aren't going to want to be able to focus on them. They're not going to focus on those numbers because they're not at the top of mind. So I would always make them accountable for the number. And an easy way to break this down would be if I've got a salesperson and let's say over the month he's got to make 100,000 in revenue for that salesperson. Now simply, if his lead flow is equal throughout the month, I would say, right, you've got to get around 33,000 by the 10th, 66,000 by the 20th to make sure they're staying on track on run rate. Most people never break it down day by day. I would break down the daily run rate every 10 days, every 20 days, every week, and they would have that there on the whiteboard, on the office, on the monitor. Without that data being there, your salespeople aren't being held accountable. And it's for you as the leader to hold them accountable for those numbers. And I would continuously always drill those numbers with them, ask them how they're doing, how they're performing on those numbers, and I would communicate expectations all the time. So there's ways to do it and there's ways not to do it. The way not to do it is to say, why have you not hit that number? I might say that very rarely, but that's not the way I would communicate on a daily basis. What I would say is, what support do you need to hit that number if they're lagging behind? And by asking what support they need, they're always able to say either one or two things. They'll say, I need this from you, and they'll tell you they need whatever they need, and you'll support them with that. Or they'll say, I don't need anything, I just need to work. Or of some sort of answer like that. And by doing that regularly, you know that they have all the tools there. And by them saying to you, as the sales manager or the founder, I don't need any support, I've got this, it actually internally makes them feel as though, right, I've got to get these numbers now. Because I've just told this guy, I've got it covered. And you've got to be able to ask them all the time. You can't be afraid to ask them. So that's the number one thing. I set measurable goals, I make that a clear expectation, and I'm asking about it regularly. But to accompany that is the second thing. And the second thing that you need in place is adequate training and development. Now, there's two sides to training and development that I work with: the salespeople, the closers, sales consultants, business development, SDRs. There's a few different types of training and development that I do. The first one is the easiest, which is the one-to-one. Now, I would do this in a weekly scenario. I would block out half an hour every single week in the diary. They have the invite and they know that's their non-negotiable. That's there every time. And you know that meeting them, which is their one-to-one, I would actually put that so it's all about them, not about me. Even I've made the mistake before where when I've had that meeting and I started talking about work, I've started talking about me, I've started talking about the business rather than them. That's the half an hour which is about their development and what they need support with. So I'd commonly say, I would structure that one-to-one in a format which is, how are you? How are you doing? How's everything? And commonly, the first thing that they would say when you say, how are you? Is, yeah, I'm doing okay. I would always press again and dig a bit deeper. That shows that I genuinely care, because a good sales manager, a good founder truly does care. And then after I get the answer, we'll just talk about the numbers, how they're doing, how they're performing. And commonly, their one-to-one can turn into a therapy session. This is why emotional intelligence as a sales leader is so important. You have to have it. Without that being there, you can't articulate to your sales team on how you can really have their back, because you need to be able to recognize when they need the support. So I would ask them how they're doing, how they need what kind of support do they need for the numbers. And the last thing that I always cover is, what do they need from me? What do they need from me to hit their numbers, to hit KPIs? Let's say something that I would cover in the one-to-one would be, let's say they're coming late regularly, or punctuality or performance. I will cover that in the one-to-one in more of a supportive sense. Of course, if they're not performing month on month, week on week, you're going to have them on more of a performance management plan. And I can tell you this, any time that I've had someone on a performance management plan, which I don't do so easily because I go through and give them support after support, I know that they're not going to last. I know it's just a certain amount of time. I can't even think of a single scenario where someone's been on a performance management plan or a PIP and turned it around. It's very rare. So that covers the one-to-one side, but I make it all about their development. If they're coming late, I don't say, why have you come late, and cover that in the week. I'll talk about how that connects to their KPIs. I'll talk about how them coming late will affect them hitting their numbers and affect their commission. I'd rather talk about it in that sense, about their commission and numbers, rather than saying, I don't like them coming late. Because that is that expectation there as a leader. That should always be there, that level of respect. But when I make every single KPI, whether it's numbers that need to be hit, or attendance, or punctuality, or time on the desk, or productivity, when I make it about their commission, make it about where they want to earn, make it about where they want to go, make it about their goals, I'm always going to make sure that they're going to be hitting that number. They're going to be focused on hitting it for them, not for me. And them doing it for themselves is far more powerful. It's way more powerful, a salesperson hitting their numbers for them rather than a pressure. The pressure needs to be there because that's what the sales role is. But if that's the only thing that's making them hit the numbers, they will eventually burn out. They will stop performing. If it's because they're highly driven. When I was in selling gym memberships, so back in 2015, 2016, I outperformed every single person in the company. We had 400 salespeople at the time, and I would outsell every single person. And people would often ask me, how are you so motivated? How do you keep going? simply by having that number one spot used to become like the key thing for me, because I wanted to be number one. When I came into the company, everyone used to look up to that guy who was the number one seller. Then I wanted to become number one, and after I became number one, I wanted to keep it. And that's what was my motivation. Everyone's different, but that was my thing. But then the development side of recognizing that of your salespeople is so key. Now, within this second point, you also have training. Some of the training in the points will be overlapping, so we'll be covering those in the other points later in this 10. But training is so important for our salespeople. If you're not continuously reinvesting and giving them training, you're never going to get them to get buy-in from you, because you're not investing in them. Now, we're a sales consulting company, we're a sales training company. We build sales processes, CRMs, and trainings for companies. We have an entire license that we come and train their salespeople. Now, if you have your salespeople not being upskilled, not being trained, eventually they're going to lag. That's just the natural order of things. Profit is not a natural occurrence. Profit in a business is a forced occurrence. If you do nothing of its natural state, it shrinks. If I stop going to the gym, I shrink. If I stop, I'll get fatter. But naturally, the order of things is not profit. So the natural order of things is not to grow within business. It has to be forced. Therefore, training has to always be there. It has to be there in a way where it's continuously supporting them, continuously doing drills, role plays. Now, I'll be breaking down a lot of how you do these role plays and drills within other videos. But in this video, it's all about having that training there as a standard. 100% I would have a monthly training there every single month in the diary, where we take all the salespeople off the dialer and we have it there. And I used to actually take the risk of actually closing the diary for an hour for everyone, and the phones wouldn't be covered for that hour. And there used to be a pressure all the time on why is the phone not covered for that hour. But for me, the investment in the people used to be far more effective. An hour being lost in a month of 160 hours of a salesperson working on a full-time employment, 1 hour being lost into training is so key. And I work with founders all the time, and they struggle to find that hour. If you can't give 1 hour of training to your salespeople at least every month, then I'm going to say like you're really going to struggle to develop them and get them to get buy-in with you. So that is such an important point of always having that regular monthly training. Then I would additionally have resources for them to consume. So every single week I would design some sort of CPD training. Now, for our salespeople, that when we go into companies, we have an entire module that a salesperson should be going through. And it's probably like, I think at least 50 hours. We'll get them to do half an hour every single week. If there's a company that needs jump starting and they're really struggling with conversion and their conversion is dropping under 25%, we'll go in and we'll do things at a really fast speed and really push them and take them off the dialer for a whole 2 days and really push it and really push their training really hard and get them to do drills and then get feedbacks and sales calls. But that training needs to be there as a regular baseline, because without that being there, you're going to really struggle for your salespeople to continuously perform. Point number 3 is motivating and driving performance of your sales team. Motivating your sales team is not what you see on Instagram. It's not shouting at your team, hitting your chest like Wolf of Wall Street. That is a way to motivate. That's very culturally and tribally driven. That isn't the energy that I had with my sales team. The sales team standard that I would have would be the first thing that I'm acting as the leader. So if I'm the sales manager or founder, I would jump onto calls. I would do the calls at times. And when I do the calls, often when I would do the call, I would make sure everyone is in the office when I'm doing the call, so everyone can hear me take it. Because in any business, the founder, if his closing rate is 40%, the salespeople tend to be less. That's just the natural order. The salespeople will just be less than the founder. Very rarely you'll find where other people can close better than the founder. So I want the founder to be sales trained and then ensure that each of the salespeople can hear that call happening when I'm making that call, when the sales manager is making that call, so we can continuously drive performance by leading from the front. Leading from the front is one of the best ways to motivate your people, not shouting and beating your chest. And I would often just take calls for people. And there's been times where I think, right, I've got a spare half an hour, spare hour, and I can see someone's got a call, and I would offer, should I take that call for you? Do you want to sit with me and I'll do it for you? Do you know when you're doing that call for your salesperson, for them to get the commission off the back of your time, do you know how much that's going to drive them to win? And if you close that call for them and they're going to get paid off and watched you and learned from you and got paid for it, that is incredibly motivating for a salesperson. Now, commonly, like we've got a sales company that we worked with, and they sell 10K packages. So the package is $10,000 and they give 10% commission to their salespeople if they're hitting a certain tier and certain bracket. Now, on that, that's $1,000 for a salesperson. We got the founder to sit in on the calls and to take calls for salespeople just randomly. And he would always close at a higher rate because he's got a personal brand. People recognize him, they're enthusiastic to speak to him, and he can manage to close them. He's also great at sales, but he wasn't taking the sales calls now and again. When we got him to do that, the salespeople's performance shot up straight away. Their closing ratios all grew simply because the leader was acting from the front and they were all a lot more motivated. It's a massive point to really do things with the team and really drive performance with the team together. There is a point about product knowledge as well, because you tend to find that the founder just knows the detail of that product. And one thing is actually the sales skills, but also on that call, they end up hearing details of the product that end up being so valuable to those salespeople that they learn from them as well. So that's a massive point of like really jumping in, taking those calls, motivating and driving performance by good actions as a leader. That's a super powerful one. And that's one of the ways that I used to motivate and drive my sales team. The next thing is, whether you've got a screen in your office or a whiteboard, those metrics need to be updated daily, if not as they go along throughout the day. Now, if you've got a digital board in your office, you want to make sure that that board is live data, that they can see something happening all the time. And even if you've got a bell or something happening where there's a sale made at any time and something happens, that sound is massive. Because I found a lot of the times when I've gone into sales teams and in a lot of businesses, they said, oh, we used to ring a bell here. And then we stopped ringing the bell. Why did you stop ringing the bell? Well, we were ringing it all the time. And then what happened? We stopped ringing it. So the founder thought, the bell's not as important because we're ringing it all the time, until the bell stopped ringing because it wasn't there anymore. I don't know if you can relate with anything like this, but this is a big one where the actions that are getting you to win, even when repetitive, they need to stay there. They need to be there all the time as a standard. Your non-negotiables need to be there all the time. And having that feeling in the office when the sales meets needs to be there every single time. And the metrics and dashboards that we spoke about need to be live. If it's a whiteboard, what I love is a salesperson making the sale, going up to the whiteboard and updating it live, taking a minute to stand up. And psychologically what that does is it allows them to write, and it feels like they're achieving something. And it becomes a point where the whiteboard needs to be filled or the board needs to be filled. It's such a psychological trigger with the team, having that whiteboard continuously needing to be filled out and updated. On our sales board in the gyms, we used to have like a board with like 50 joiners that could join. So we used to cross off how many people have joined that day. A good day was like 7 or 8 people. So we would cross those out as we go along, and the salesperson would add their revenue and updating that revenue all the time. And you know, eventually when it became standard, the salesperson, the membership consultant would get up, update the board, update their revenue, do a little fist pump, sit back down. That itself used to feel incredible. And everyone used to see that person stand up. He used to feel as though, or she used to feel as though, I'm filling out the board, I've just made the sale. And everyone would see them fill it out live. And it would encourage others to want that same behavior. You've got to recognize a lot of behaviors are very psychological with the sales team. So you want to make sure all those behaviors are there and are being initiated. And it takes a good leader to be able to spot when those aren't there. And these are a lot of the SOPs that we put into businesses, because when a lot of the times, if I'm working with a big company and they're, let's say between like 5 to 15 million, I might just go in and just sit and watch and just see how they're behaving. And I can find out very quickly within the culture of that team for things that they don't know what we're looking out for. Because the salespeople in that team might be thinking, what's he looking out for here? Is he just watching us? And I'll be looking out for all the little things that they won't even know. So it massively dictates the culture of that team. The next thing is the sales process itself, having not just buy-in from the membership team or the sales team or the SDRs or BDMs, but also that sales process is clear to everyone from the top down. So pipeline on the CRM, for salespeople it's clear, for leadership it's clear. So many times I'll go into a business and I'll look at what are they doing, what's the journey that the customer's going through, and I want to see the pipeline of how they've shown up, what happens next, and how many leads they've got in the pipeline. And commonly I'll see so many things being missed and being done differently within the team. And that standard needs to be there for every single person. And by having that standard there for every single person, it becomes the norm. And then things happen the same way every time, which gets things to get better every single time. By having one standard operating system for the sales team regarding the pipeline, where as a leader, you know exactly what's happening with every lead on the dashboard, you know where it's going to go, and the salespeople know what kind of pipeline we're following, it becomes really clear. And it takes the founder to be good on CRMs. What I find is I speak to a lot of founders and their CRM knowledge is not very good. It's not very clear. They'll say, oh yeah, I've got this system, I don't really use it. It's like sometimes, and I'll just do an audit and I check the notes and I check the logs and I can see all things aren't there. So if those basic actions aren't being done with metrics and dashboards and all those actions with that sales process, I know they're always going to fall short. And that's point number 5. Now, point number 6 is just building a good, strong customer relationship. Too many times we find salespeople don't have a good connection with the customer. So the first thing that I do to build that connection with the customer, because what can commonly happen is after you have someone on the sales team and they're performing week on week, month on month, there's a detachment that can happen with the customer, what's happening on their side. They don't mean for it to happen. It can just happen over a long time horizon where they've sold something and the next thing your team pick it up. Now, commonly you'll hear things where your product team, your delivery team, success team, account managers will say, oh, they've promised all this stuff. We never said they were going to give that. And there becomes a divide between delivery and sales. And that divide is usually caused by, you think as a founder, it's the salespeople being dodgy. Commonly it can be, but you need to find that out quickly. And that's usually the CRM would help you with that and call recordings. But what will happen a lot of the times would be you're not connecting those two departments. You're not sharing customer wins with your salespeople. What I would do is within companies, we get all the best testimonials. And when we're doing our morning meetings, I would show those testimonials and those customer wins to the sales team. And what does that do psychologically? It boosts their belief. It massively boosts their belief all the time. When I was like, I'll use the gym example again. In the gyms, when a customer would get in shape and would get fit and get completely shredded, I would get that person on the gym floor and I might bring them towards the salespeople and say, look at this guy, who signed him up? Did you sign him up? Look at him now, look how great he looks. The customer feels good, the membership consultant feels good, and it's a great feeling. Everyone visually sees it. And I would literally, because the sales office would be downstairs and the people would be training upstairs, I would bring that person in and just show him and be like, look at this guy, look what he's accomplished. Look at this girl, look how good she looks, look how amazing she's feeling. And then commonly with now with digital businesses, what we'll do is we'll get testimonials and we'll show them to the sales team all the time, pushing their belief up. And then when you do that for a few weeks, you'll hear the tonality in your salespeople change. You'll see how they start to believe in what they're saying more. When they get an objection, they won't just say a standard objection. They'll say, mate, you need this thing. You have to. Because I've seen so many people win. I've seen so many people in your position struggle with this thing. And now I know it will massively help you. And that belief will only come from you actually showing customer wins all the time. And by sharing those customer wins all the time, you're going to find that your sales team believe it more, which makes the closing ratio go up. And that's what we're really here for. And that brings me to point number 7 about leveraging technology. I'm working with a lot of founders at the moment, and they have sales organizations and sales teams, and they're not implementing AI. They're not implementing technology. They're not, automations aren't there. Their CRM is not tied to every other part of the business in the way of the customer journey and the sales process. And these things need to all be linked together. So as a founder, it's your job to actually provide your team with all the best technology. Now with AI, there's a tool we've been using at the moment that we just put into On Business, which is called Air. And Air is an AI dialer. So if, let's say, someone goes onto your website, they'll click contact you now, they'll put their details in, instantly the dialer will call them back. The voice sounds incredibly human. It would absolutely surprise you. So you can white label Air, or you can use it straight from the platform and create these automations, and it would call the prospect back straight away and say to them, so you just inquired, reading off some of the data that they've put into their form, saying, great, can make time for you on an appointment, when do you want to get booked in? And then it automatically does that setter role for you. And that, when we've now put it into a business, it can dramatically reduce the amount you're spending on a setter. Because if you've got like 6 or 7 closers, you've probably got around 2, 3, 4 setters. You've got a setting team putting those appointments in for the closers on this specific system, whether they're doing triage calls or messages out or emails out. And when we can leverage technology like that, we can massively reduce the cost of that setting team. We can massively increase the efficiency of the closing team, and we will reduce the amount of manual work needed. The emails, the follow-ups, the communication, as much as you can automate, you need to go through that process. And I follow a 3-step framework. When I look at the sales team or even my own calendar, it is, can I automate it? Because that's the cheapest, fastest version. Can I eliminate it? So can I get rid of that certain task? Or can I delegate it? Because delegating is now going to cost us money. So I always go through that process. And at times, if I can't eliminate something and I can automate it, I will automate as much as possible. Because too many times, we've either got too many steps in for customers, or we've not automated enough, and we're not delegating enough. So I will always go through that framework and those 3 simple steps: eliminate, automate, and delegate. And always make sure that the team has the best technology and has everything behind them supporting them to close. Because imagine like you've got a sales team and they're commonly telling you how an email didn't go through or a touch point wasn't there. That's for you to fix, because you want to be able to providing all the tools for your salespeople to really win. So otherwise, the salespeople, if it's done manually, there's a chance of errors. So anytime we can use technology, I want to make sure technology is there. Now, the other bit, like, it is tied to our earlier point that we had around leadership and management. But in point number 8, I really want to cover conflict resolution. It's something that you don't normally think about when running a sales team, but it comes up all the time. I'll give you a scenario. Your sales team, someone's just made a sale. Another salesperson says, oh, that was mine. That was my lead. I had that lead. You as a founder need to be able to resolve those issues where these 2 people do not feel demotivated. And you know what founders do? They'll just be like, no, it's yours. Or, no, that's your sale. That they'll decide, rather than having one clear process. So conflict resolution in so many different ways, it needs to really be there. And it needs to be the standard for how you run your team, because conflicts will always come up in sales, especially with salespeople. Egos can be quite high. And when egos are high in a sales team, conflicts would naturally occur. And when those conflicts occur within your team, they'll either be left like they're not in the circle of safety. So, like, one of the great things I learned from Simon Sinek in his leadership book was Leaders Eat Last. It was the circle of safety. And you always want to keep all of your team members, whether it's operational, sales, marketing, I want to keep all of my team in that circle of safety. And they step out of the circle of safety when they don't feel protected by the founder or the owner or the sales manager or the leader or the line manager. When they don't feel protected, that's when they're vulnerable to thinking, I'm not motivated, I want to leave, I want to go elsewhere, my performance dips. So you will commonly think, why is this person not performing their best? But it could have been an action that you did weeks ago that you haven't connected. So conflict resolution is a massive one. That's why I've made it point number 8 to be one of the most important things, and it's so overlooked for teams. Number 9 is, I'm not going to say never being happy. I'd rather say continuous improvement. And continuous improvement for point number 9 all comes down to reviewing performance month on month and looking at how to improve. If you're a company that's been going over for a while, you can review year-on-year performance, and you can drive performance and budgeting and targeting for your team. But if you don't have that, you need to be able to set expectations and provide continuous improvement, but by giving educated guesses, and that a lot of the times can get messed up. So if you've got a good finance director, if you've got someone who's great with money, great with budgeting, and you can forecast those, that will massively help you, because continuous improvement falls apart a lot of the times when forecasting isn't done right, when budgeting isn't done right. Like when I worked at Virgin Active, they were under pressure from the company that owns Virgin Active called Brait. Brait would put pressure onto the directors. The directors would put unwarranted pressure onto the general managers, which would lead onto the sales managers, which would lead onto the salespeople. Now, on this chain of command, there's probably 5 or 6 layers here. So the message came from the top, and it just never came through the right way when it got to the bottom, and performance dipped. And somewhere along this line, the communication wasn't there, and that continuous improvement could fall down massively when things aren't being processed the right way, passed on the right way. And this is why when your leaders and managers are delivering any sort of changes and news, it has to be done the right way. When they would change commission at my previous companies, because they changed it 3, 4, 5 times in the time of me working there, there was times where I was a part of the change, where I was implementing, and there was times where I was taking the change as a salesperson. As I progressed, my view changed, but when I was a salesperson, when they would cut my commission, I would simply think, how much less money am I making? How much more do I still hate or love this job? That's the first question I would ask myself. And so many times I would think, because changes normally would result in me earning less, it would just demotivate me. Then when I was a sales manager and I would implement changes into a team and I had to deliver the bad news, I had to always put a positive spin on it. But at times it was super hard. So this is why continuous improvement on how you communicate, continuous improvement on your leadership skills, continuous improvement on how you do everything while so much shit is going on, while budgeting can be stressful and all these things can happen, it's such a key component. So I want to make sure that is there. And the final point, number 10, a clear call to action on what you expect from your sales team and keeping the standard high. The standard needs to be high because of the standard that you have set when you are not speaking and only doing. When others watch you. When others watch you by the way you walk, by the posture that you have on your desk, is the standard that you set. As a sales manager, I remember always trying to keep my back upright. I used to naturally have a hunch, and I wanted to hunch and type. Think of the body language that I've got, how it's different. Every time someone walks into the office, my spine is straight, my shoulders are back, my head is straight. You would never link posture to sales performance, but I can tell you, the speed of how you walk with urgency, how you stand, how you sit, everything creates that energy and creates that ideal leadership for your salespeople. My sales team used to tell me how inspired they are by me, how much they look up to me. I used to put in so much effort to make sure I am the right leader. And now with companies, when we look at the founder, you can have times that they're super stressed, there's so much going on in their life, and they'll show that stress externally. They'll leak that stress off their body. They'll come in and their shoulders will be like this, so they look super stressed, they're walking frantic. that's going to affect the sales team massively. And founders and managers always seem to miss the things that they're doing wrong because they only see the perspective of through their lens, what the sales team, when it isn't performing, when it isn't converting. But so many times it comes down to the leadership in the simple things and how they're carrying themselves. I hope this 10 points was super useful to you. I'm going to be making a lot more content on sales teams and actionable tactics that you can do to improve your sales team. If you like the content, like and share, comment below, because the comments really help me understand what kind of content you want to see. So I hope to get more from you so I can make even more content to help you with your business. The knowledge is absolutely free and it's here for you to implement into your business so you can absolutely go and smash it and break 7 figures into 8 figures and hopefully even further. And I'll catch you in the next one. Please like, share and subscribe. Take care.